If you think the ER is overcrowded because people abuse it, you've been blaming the wrong people your entire life. The ER isn't broken, the rest of America healthcare is, and the ER is just the room where all of it finally shows up. By the end of this video, you're going to know the real reason ERs are packed and what to do so you're never the one stuck in the hallway for 8 hours. But first, I need to show you the number hospital administrators do not want going viral. That number is 90%. That's how full most hospitals run every single day, not the ER, the whole hospital. And that one number is the real story behind everything you're about to hear. You've probably heard people just go to the ER for dumb stuff. That's why it's so slow. I used to half believe that too, but the data flips it completely. Cutting out every minor visit wouldn't fix the wait. This was never a front door problem. It's a back door problem, and back doors get closed on purpose. I'm Dr. Severs, a board-certified family medicine doctor. I grew up in Long Beach, a neighborhood where the ER wasn't just for emergencies, it was our primary care clinic. Plastic chairs, the same TV rerun on a loop. We weren't there because we wanted to be. We were there because we didn't have anywhere else to go. Here's what almost nobody tells you. It's not 3 reasons, it's a cycle. 4 forces feeding each other plus 1 multiplier that makes all of it worse, including something happening to the doctors themselves that most patients never even hear about. Quick disclaimer, I'm a doctor. This is general health education, not a diagnosis for your specific situation. Talk to your own doctor about your own care. Okay, let's get into it. Here's the single biggest reason. It's called boarding. Boarding happens when a patient in the ER has already been seen, already diagnosed, and the doctor says you need to be admitted. But there's no bed upstairs, so that patient just stays in the ER, in the hallway, sometimes for a full day. Here's where it gets crazy. A study following 25 hospitals found that every time bed occupancy went up by just 10%, ER wait times stretched by 19 minutes, and for patients waiting to be admitted, 33 minutes. Those extra minutes are sometimes the difference between antibiotics for sepsis arriving on time or not, between a stroke protocol starting in the window that saves brain function or missing it. Think about it like an airplane runway. It's not that too many planes are landing, it's that planes can't take off, so they're stacked up, burning fuel, going nowhere. If you sat in an ER at 2 a.m. wondering why it's taking so long when the waiting room looks barely full, this is why. Every bed behind those doors could already belong to someone who doesn't need to be there anymore. Imagine that's your kid on the other side of that wait. That's boarding. But here's where it gets even more frustrating. Quick pause. If this is helpful, understanding how healthcare actually works, not the headline version, I made a free guide called How to Navigate the Healthcare System Without Getting Lost. Link below, grab it, then come back because it's about to get even bigger. Most hospitals operate at 85 to 95% full every single day. On a spreadsheet, that looks efficient. But an empty hospital bed costs money to maintain, and hospitals are businesses. So administrators trim the slack. The result is 0 buffer. Wait until you hear this. No buffer means the moment something unexpected happens, flu season, a heat wave, a bad accident, even just a rough Monday, the whole system tips over. When hospital occupancy crosses roughly 85 to 90%, boarding becomes significantly more likely across the board. A huge share of hospitals in this country live above that line as a normal Tuesday. Even when a hospital patient is ready, medically stable, done with treatment, they often can't actually go home. No skilled nursing facility bed available, no rehab spot open, no home health aid to help them recover safely. So that patient stays in their hospital bed longer than needed. That bed doesn't open up. The ER patient who needs it keeps boarding. One long chain, and the weak link is way outside the emergency department. That's somebody's grandmother waiting in a bed she doesn't need anymore, while somebody else's grandmother is having a heart attack in a hallway 2 floors down. Most people never see what's happening behind those double doors. Boarding, no buffer, and nowhere to discharge people to, that's 3. But here's the 4th one, and it's the one that's actually getting worse every single year. This is a piece almost nobody puts together. It starts years before anyone walks into the ER with the disappearance of primary care doctors. In 1998, over half of medical students matching into residencies chose to become generalists, the family doctors, the primary care backbone of the system. Today, that number is closer to 1 in 5. Why? A few brutal reasons. Specialists now earn roughly 80% more than primary care doctors, and that gap keeps widening. Primary care carries some of the highest burnout rates in all of medicine, buried under paperwork instead of patients. And frankly, during training, primary care gets treated like the fallback, not the goal. The result is a projected shortage of 68,000 primary care doctors by 2036 in this country. In rural areas, the shortfall could be over half of the workforce we actually need. We currently have about 7,300 geriatricians for a population that needs 30,000 by 2030. So what happens when you can't get in to see a primary care doctor? You wait, you put it off, and here's the data. People who don't get access to timely primary care are significantly more likely to end up in the ER, not because they're careless, but because the ER becomes the only door that's actually open. Kids without a regular doctor are almost twice as likely to rely on the ER for their care. Nearly 2 million adults in this country now use the ER as their only source of preventative care, mostly because they're uninsured or can't get in anywhere else. If you've ever waited 3 weeks for a primary care appointment and just gone to urgent care or the ER instead because you couldn't wait, that's not you being impatient. That's the system routing you there. And when people can't get preventative care, chronic disease doesn't go away. It gets worse quietly at home until it becomes an emergency. Diabetes-related ER visit jumped over 55% in less than a decade. The most severe diabetic emergencies, the kind that land you in the ICU, have been climbing by double digits every year. Patients with 4 or more chronic conditions are 2.5 times more likely to end up in the ER than someone with none. So here's the loop. Fewer doctors choose primary care. The doctors who remain are overloaded and burned out. Patients can't get in. Chronic disease goes unmanaged. It shows up as an emergency instead of a checkup. The ER absorbs it, and the ER was never built to be the place where an entire country's unmanaged healthcare finally lands. That's the cycle feeding the front door, but there's one more piece, and it might be the most human part of this whole story. Even if a bed is physically empty, it's useless without a nurse or doctor to staff it. This is the multiplier, and it's not just about numbers on a schedule, it's about people breaking. Burnout in emergency medicine runs as high as 70%, among the worst of any specialty in medicine. Emergency physicians are leaving the workforce at more than 5% a year, and that spiked to 9% in 2020. Female emergency physicians on average stop practicing 12 years earlier than their male colleagues. 9 out of 10 emergency physicians report being threatened or physically attacked at work in just the past year. Read that again. 9 out of 10. On top of that, they're absorbing unpredictable, brutal caseloads, working nights, weekends, holidays. Every hour a hospital needs covering. Researchers actually measure this. When ER crowding gets worse on a shift, physicians' cortisol, their stress hormone, spikes by the end of that shift. That's not a feeling, that's their body registering it at a real physical threat. A 2026 study interviewed emergency physicians who left the profession, and the biggest reason wasn't burnout. It was something researchers called moral injury. The damage that happens when you know exactly what a patient needs, and the system won't let you give it to them. One line from that study has stuck with me. Physicians describe being expected to fix problems that were created far upstream, while getting graded on speed and satisfaction scores instead of whether people were actually safe. I became a family doctor because I wanted to catch problems before they became emergencies. Watching my colleagues in the ER get asked to fix what the rest of the system broke and then get blamed for the wait. That's one of the hardest parts of this job to witness from the outside. And when physicians leave, the ones who stay carry more patients each. More patients per doctor is directly tied to higher risk of death for patients in that ER. In one large study, patient loads of 20 to 30 per physician nearly double the odds of death within a week compared to lighter loads. That's not a staffing inconvenience, that's mortality statistic. So now here's the full picture. Boarding, no buffer, nowhere to discharge to, a primary care pipeline collapsing on the front end, and burnt out physicians leaving on the back end, all feeding each other at the same time. This isn't just an inconvenience. Overcrowded ERs are linked to real, serious consequences. Delayed antibiotics for sepsis, delayed pain medication, higher rates of medical errors, people leaving before they're even seen, ambulances diverted to hospitals further away. In one large study out of Korea, ERs running at or above full capacity had meaningfully higher in-hospital death rates. That's someone's heart attack sitting in a hallway right now in a hospital near you. If you're a parent watching this one's for you especially. Knowing why the ER is crowded changes how you advocate. You're not being paranoid asking, has my child been triaged yet? And what's their level? You're working the system the way it actually works. And if your doctor only gives you 7 minutes at your regular visit, ask this: what's our plan if this gets worse? What are the warning signs that mean I go to the ER versus their urgent care versus calling you first? Having that plan before you're desperate keeps you out of the backup. Okay, so if it's not about people using the ER wrong, what actually fixes this? The real fixes aren't inside the ER. They're upstream and downstream of it. Hospitals managing bed capacity in real time, faster, safer discharge planning, more funding for skilled nursing and rehab facilities so patients have somewhere to go, rebuilding the primary care pipeline, better pay, less paperwork, more respect for the specialty that's supposed to be the front door to this whole system, and protecting the physicians already inside the ER so the ones who care the most don't keep walking away. One study of a primary care access program found it measurably lowered ER visit growth, and most of that improvement came from patients who could have been seen in a regular doctor's office instead. That's real, but it's one piece of the puzzle, not a whole fix. I became a family physician because I wanted to fix problems before they became emergencies. The ER shouldn't be the front door of healthcare, but for millions of Americans, including the family I grew up in, it still is. If you remember nothing else from this video, remember this: the ER isn't failing because doctors stopped caring. It's failing because the entire system keeps asking it to solve problems it was never designed to fix, while the doctors doing that job are quietly walking away. 4 things behind that quickly. 1, the ER is crowded because admitted patients get stuck boarding with nowhere else to go. 2, hospitals run with almost no buffer, so any surge in demand tips the whole system over. 3, a shrinking primary care workforce pushes more patients toward the ER before they ever needed emergency care in the first place. 4. Burnout and moral injury are pushing emergency physicians out of the field, which multiplies every single problem above it. If this made sense to you, drop a comment below. Tell me the longest you've ever waited in the ER and where. I read every single one. If you like this content, watch this last video on the hidden cost of delaying care. It'll definitely open your eyes. I didn't go to medical school to withhold information. I went so I can bring information back to the neighborhood, back to you. Hope you enjoyed this content. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.